Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember, like and subscribe. We got some great content for you every single day. And we got some great stuff today with, I'm so happy, Gord Stellick, who has been interviewing me on his radio show for years on NHL Network Radio. I finally get to turn the tables a little bit and ask Gord some questions. So, Gord, thanks for taking the time today. I really, really appreciate it. We got a lot to talk about.
Well, we do, and I always talk about EJ running into you. I think it was Brampton, whatever,
Yes,
but
it was a long time ago.
Ontario Hockey League game. But it always was. You had the hockey background as well, which doesn't put us above anybody, but it just means we had kind of similar and different backgrounds. So I always love chatting hockey with you.
We got the bug. We've had the bug.
Yes,
for a long time, and somehow we still have it. So let me ask you about the Leafs. I want to start with John Chayka because, once upon a time, you were that young general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, so you have maybe some feeling that could be different than the rest of us for the situation he's in. Obviously, it's different times, different ownership, a lot of different things. But how do you think he's done so far in these first, I don't even know if it's 2 months yet.
So people like activity, fans do.
Yeah.
So I would say really well. That doesn't mean that's going to define his complete body of work because, but you had to go out and did you overpay term wise for Darren Raddysh? Don't know, but you had to do something, and he did something big. I don't know. Fans have looked at look who left jobs to come to Toronto. Pat Burns, Cliff Fletcher, Pat Quinn, Brian Burke, Lou Lamoriello, right? So, they were thinking maybe Doug Armstrong or somebody else like that. So it's no fault of John Chayka's that they chose to go in that direction. So kind of different. Matt Sundin was a sexy ad. How it works together remains to be seen. It was kind of a innovative setup that they put into place. I'm still not big on, I just like GMs or in any sport just to shoot the breeze with everybody. And it's not everybody's thing. He's got a certain way of doing things there, but he made one trade. So Joe Woll's not going to be the goalie. The one move that he didn't control that was the most fortuitous was winning the draft lottery, which I think it's like planning your retirement on a Powerball win, right? So, so the beauty of the fans is, as pissed off as they could be, all of a sudden it flips to that Gavin McKenna is going to be single-handedly that kind of difference maker, which actually won't be the case, but it was a win. It was a sexy, fun, got everyone excited.
Yeah, it certainly changed dramatically, over the course of, let's say, 48 hours from when he came in to the press conference and then to them winning the draft lottery. The feelings kind of swung, I think, in all directions. So it's been a little bit of an odd couple of months. How about the coaching hire, Jim Hiller? I mean, I always say to people when it comes to the Leafs, Gord, John Chayka, I don't know if I would have hired him, but he's got the job now. So we'll see how it goes. Jim Hiller, I don't think I would have hired him, but he's got the job. Let's see how it goes. What do you make of the hiring of Jim Hiller after apparently, according to the Leafs, they talked to a lot of candidates?
So, okay, EJ, this is what gets me is I think John Chayka, what was he, was it 17 candidates, and they claimed they talked to 45 coaches. So it had people thinking, like, this has to be the next Roger Nielsen, like when he was hired decades ago, someone that's completely different. So I kind of feel like going general manager search committee. I could have told you what John Chayka's about. I don't know why, whatever. And you didn't need to interview 45 coaches. You could find out what the Jim Hillers of the world are about. But he got the job. And you see whether it's Bruce Cassidy or others about their second crack at being a head coach is a real positive thing. There are things he did well in LA, things he didn't. They immediately find B-roll footage of him as an assistant coach, same like Ryan Craig in Vegas, that makes it look like he's, we are the world with Nylander, Marner, Matthews, Rielly. I don't know. Who knows what an assistant coach that was years ago. So I take it that could be a plus. So neither gave you a wow thing. Okay. But that's not a knock. Sheldon Keefe was not a wow hire. Mm-hmm. Mike Babcock was a wow hire in Toronto. who has by far the better record was Sheldon Keefe. So they're going to get a great chat. Like EJ, the big thing is about, and let's face it, they got hired by this ownership group or the president, Keith Pelley. That's the key anywhere. If they have your back, that's the biggest thing. But also, Brad Treliving found out you can lose your back pretty quickly when things unravel. But things can't unravel this year. They've already unraveled. They've got to start de-unraveling, whatever that may be.
It's funny because, you mentioned it. They talked to a lot of people for John Chayka, from that job, he ends up with. They talked to a lot of people with the coach, they go to Hiller. Is that the thing now, just to try to talk to a lot of people and go on these fact-finding missions where you're always trying to get more information from people? Because I would be concerned if I was a GM candidate, coaching candidate. You go in, obviously you want to pitch yourself, you want these jobs, but is it, it may be disingenuous if the team really is only looking to kind of pick your brain and move on to the next guy.
Bingo. And you would have talked to guys like, now first, I don't know why you throw the numbers out to make it look like it was a genius hire. I don't know. That's number one. I keep thinking, stop trying to show how incredibly smart you are, that this person you went all corners of the earth to get. But the other, and I know having talked to some people, they kind of said, you know what? This is their freebie to use me and everybody else to get an overall perspective, at no cost about what hockey minds think about our organization. And I feel in some cases, I am one of many that was brought in just for that. And that kind of pisses me off. But if that's the reality to try to get a job, because maybe, who knows, it could work, then I understand that's the reality of what I have to do. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, it's I guess it's just part of the business. It's probably part of a lot of different businesses in all walks of life that would happen. But it seems like that was what was going on a lot in Toronto. You mentioned the Hiller situation with, digging up these photos of him as an assistant coach there and, chatting with Matthews or Nylander. It's so interesting to me, Gord, is like the head coach is such a different role. I mean, I always feel like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like there's guys that strike me as assistant coaches. They have that assistant coach vibe. A head coach, I think, has to have a certain presence about him that goes along with a lot of the things that make you a successful head coach. I don't know if Jim Hiller has that presence. I know in LA, he had that meltdown of sorts in that first round series against Edmonton. He didn't react well when asked, I thought, a pretty fair question after one of the games. And it looked like to me, boy, I was in my mind, I was like, God, this guy looks like he'd be better off as an assistant coach. But here he is with another crack. Do you get those vibes about coaches when you watch them, that one guy is better suited to be a head coach where you have to make hard decisions and you have to make enemies sometimes?
Yeah, it's funny because you look at the guy on the left, Craig Berube, what happened in St. Louis when he was an assistant and moved up. And, he looked like a head coach, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you about, that whatever that Peter principle, sometimes people find their appropriate level and then go one step too higher. And I'm using it as an observation with Jim Hiller. That's not, you and I aren't punking on him, just saying, yeah, I get that. And it's not even about prove me wrong. It's just an observation because there are
that's it.
Lots of assistant coaches that jump up and sees it in their way, but it is a different animal. It is a different challenge. But like all of us, if you get a second crack at something or another crack at something, whatever, you learn from what happened before. And that team or that organization generally is the benefactor for hiring you.
Yeah, it's funny because people will always talk about guys coming in and they've been somewhere else, or they've talked about retreads. And, for me, at the end of the day, I like what you're saying there. I don't mind a guy getting a second chance because he can kind of hit the ground running, or even a third chance sometimes if you've had some success, if you show some promise. Because I don't think, and Gord, you lived it. You were in that role as a general manager. I have come to the realization, at least, from watching all these years, there's no one path to becoming a great general manager. Some guys are scouts and move on. Other guys are in other parts of management. In the National Football League, for example, I think Ernie Accorsi was the newspaper guy, and he ended up being the general manager for the New York Giants, and he won the Super Bowl. So I just think guys can come from a lot of different walks of life. I think the key in being a good manager or being a good coach is being able to manage people. And I don't know if you have to have done it before or not done it before, but it's a hard job. I guess my point is to get experience in that role, and having it can be very valuable.
So you go back, the best of the second 6 teams was not the Philadelphia Flyers. They won 2 Stanley Cups, but was the St. Louis Blues. Their first 3 years. Yeah. And then in a short period of time, Scotty Bowman, Al Arbor, and Cliff Fletcher all got let go. Right. Yeah. And you're talking about Stanley Cups everywhere else in particular roles. So to your point, what they gleaned from that experience. And yes, again, I always talk about it on broadcasting, but it's really the same anywhere, unless you're a doctor, that, we're not splitting the atom, and there's no heavy lifting, and there's common sense. There's about handling people. There's about surrounding yourself with good people, and you don't need to make it more difficult about how it goes. I mean, really, those are the parameters in anywhere, what you think about a great organization. And I think when you leave somewhere else, you learn about that. Maybe you learn a bit more. It's funny, Alex Anthopoulos, the old general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, lived 4 doors down from us. Mm-hmm. We were kind of bummed when he left because our daughter was their babysitter, to make a good coin. But anyway, but I remember the day a huge moving truck pulled up to his house, and he was going to LA. He was working with the Dodgers then, and he was all wound up. And he just said, what I learned is character. In future, character. As we know, he went on to the Atlanta Braves and won a World Series. And that's a big lesson, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden that, he got driven home firsthand, and obviously something that weighs way more significantly this time around for him, being a successful general manager.
Yeah, I just think that's what you're hoping for, that whatever, when you hire someone who's, is a second chance type guy, that they have learned and they can hit the ground running and they can implement those thoughts in a second chance. Now, we know that, John Chayka is in his second opportunity as a manager, albeit I think this is a much better one, a fairer opportunity to assess him, seeing that in Arizona it was difficult. Jim Hiller's second time, and in this case, he comes as the choice as head coach, as opposed to just being elevated like he was in LA. You mentioned Darren Raddysh. Let me ask you about that acquisition, because it tells me, that they're trying to, we were wondering when Chayka was hired, they're going to rebuild, retool, what are they going to do? It tells me they're obviously going to get back in the playoffs now, making that move. I liked it because of the guys available to play defense. He could shoot the puck. Yeah, obviously he's 30 years old. He's been a little bit of a late bloomer, but his numbers are hard to overlook. Yeah, they're paying him a lot. Yeah, the term is a lot. That's kind of the business. They're probably hoping if we get 3 to 5 good years out of him, it's probably not a bad thing. What did you make of that acquisition and the way it was kind of pulled together?
Well, that was the number one need. So EJ, I don't quite get what happened that Brad Treliving made 2 nice moves in Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Chris Tanev a couple of years ago at reasonable money. The fact that Tanev was hurt last year was a big loss. It's one of those things when you have a year like last year, you project the player being like a Hart Trophy winner, okay, which is a little ridiculous. So my point, but all of a sudden the D-core, which 2 years ago under a coach, everything seemed to be going fine, came back almost entirely as it was because they were satisfied with it. Yet last year, you talk to anybody, it started with the D can't get the forwards the puck. Now, I don't know if it started those last 3 games against the Florida Panthers in that playoff series that it got figured. I remember vividly Chris Tanev having the puck, game 7, and he's going like this. Hey, are you kidding me? What is this, Tyke House League? They haven't got that part figured out. And then it started, they picked up game 1 this year, not going back to the team that had made the playoffs 9 consecutive years and beat Ottawa. They went back to that team that bleeped the bed the final 3 games against the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
And that's how they played the bulk of their 82 regular season games. And it started with that fundamental void that the D couldn't get the puck to the forwards. So Darren Raddysh is one big positive move in that regard.
Yeah, he definitely he's got good metrics with the first pass. I just noticed him because of the work on the power play. I think the way he can shoot the puck is, I mean, he's among the best at stepping into that one timer from the top. Now he was getting that nice pass from Kucherov a lot, so that's helpful. But they got some guys in Toronto that can tee that one up for him. And if that's an area where he can come in and help that power play be better, that's an area that can help you win more games, right?
Oh, no question. No question. It's been the enigma that's Morgan Rielly, not fully seasoned that role. It was the Tyson Barrie flop that Mike Babcock decided to stick it to Kyle Dubas and didn't let him develop as he played in Colorado. It's what they have been lacking seemingly forever. And if the real Darren Raddysh stood up last year, and let's hope he did, then that's going to be a big plus moving forward.
You mentioned Morgan Rielly. I'll just give you my view is that I think they have to try to move on from Morgan Rielly. Just watching him over these last couple of years. Now, he's on a long contract. He's got a lot of control. We've seen how that has worked out with various players recently and will continue to work out that way. Where do you stand on Morgan Rielly, who by all accounts is a terrific guy and been a great guy in that room, but I just think it would be good for both parties to have a change of scenery.
Yeah, first I'm huge on bullish on Morgan Rielly. I don't know a lot of the players. He's one I know a little bit. I'm bullish. I think he should have been named captain. Okay, that's how highly I think he's valued in the room. It's kind of like the Darnell Nurse situation, except Edmonton was doing a little more pushing there, and Darnell Nurse has acquiesced. So in Morgan Rielly's case, he holds all the cards. I don't know what does he start the season, and the flashes that we had seen early on come up a bit, maybe with a better team. Because, see, you're normally thinking you should be putting a defenseman who's struggling with Morgan Rielly. But lately you've been putting Morgan Rielly to someone that he won't struggle with. So it's a conundrum. I don't know what he is thinking. Historically, you saw it with in New York, they got on James Patrick, they got on different people, whatever it is, defensemen, whether it's Jim McKinney, Brian McCabe, Larry Murphy, Thomas Caberlet. I hope that doesn't happen, but it seems like when fans know that, maybe a guy didn't want to move out, and particularly in the cap era, like, again, I hope that's not the case, but maybe it's something that he is weighing in considering whether he should go, whether there's a greener pasture he wants to go to or not.
Yeah, because it just seems like they need to, as you talked about it, just kind of reconstruct that defense, because a couple of years ago, you're right, it worked really well. Last year it did not. Tanev was hurt. He's a fragile guy. So, I mean, when he's healthy, he seems to be a guy that really is a very helpful piece. But, he's not getting any younger. And I don't know how much you can necessarily count on him to be healthy and be that player again. So I think the idea of having Raddysh and kind of restructuring their defense is really the most important thing I see for them.
So, you said bingo. No wonder Chris Tanev took term. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully. Think about Jake Muzzin. All of a sudden, there are guys on other teams, Torrey Krug, Alex Pietrangelo. Like, you get hurt, sometimes you're hurt, and your career's done. And you go, doesn't matter that you got 5 years or 4 years or 3 years term. And that, unfortunately, could be a reality. I have no idea. I hope his health is great and he plays like he did 2 years ago, because that would be huge.
Yeah. They were certainly hoping to get as much as they could out of him when they signed him. You mentioned earlier they made the trade with Joseph Woll going to the Flyers. I thought it was an interesting trade. For me, from the Philadelphia standpoint, I thought they got two pieces that I think they really intend on being part of their team. From the Toronto standpoint, I got the sense that they got guys in return. Maybe Andre gets a chance to play. We just talked about their defense and they need to kind of retool it. He's a smaller guy. I don't know how Ersson fits into the future there. It seems like it was more about space and making move to kind of create opportunity or flexibility. What did you make of that move? And what do you make of the goaltending situation moving forward with Stolarz just starting his deal? Hildeby, they have the other kid in the American League that played so well. The Marlies just won the Calder Cup. Where is the goaltending going to be moving forward in your mind?
Well, I really thought it was Joe Woll. I really like Joe Woll, but he wasn't there at the start of the year, and at the end, he didn't play all that well in the World Championship. So I was a little surprised. He's the guy they moved on. I wasn't wowed by the trade. Let's see what is Andre a better piece than then that's a little one because it's not the wow trades, EJ. And Darren Raddysh is a bit of a wow thing because you sign a big free agent. With whatever moves you make, do more of them incrementally improve your team than the other way around, right? Yeah. So if this incrementally improves their decor, good on them. I didn't see the guy enough to give an opinion. Chayka said he saw him a lot. I'm whatever.
I don't know where or when.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But, they always have to add that, whatever. Yeah. So, and then people get excited about a third round pick, which is nothing to get excited about. But you've got to restock the closet. When I just say that, I mean like it's whatever. There's one Pavel Dorofeyev of every draft, so we got picked in the third round. So you hope that's a thing. But cosmetically, people liked it. It did clear up some cap space. So I don't know if that had part of the Raddysh thing, and then maybe something else. There's concerns that Max Domi might not be healthy, so there's cap space that's out there. So what other moves may be forthcoming?
What did you make of the Marlies winning the Calder Cup? I mean, Akhtiamov, I think that's how you pronounce his name. The goaltender was the MVP, played very, very well. So he seems like he is a part of the future. We'll see if it's the immediate future or maybe a little bit more down the road. They have Hildeby, who seemingly got pushed to the side when Akhtiamov played very well. And obviously Stolarz. Did any of these AHL, and even aside from the goalies, any of the other players down at that level winning that championship? I mean, Easton Cowan, good for him. He got to be a part of that. Is there anybody else that you think has a chance to move up and maybe be part of this group this year?
So that's one thing about being a bit of a veteran team, right? Compared to the youth. Like Easton Cowan's the only guy you really know. But ideally, look at Bobby McMahon just signing with Seattle, the big contract. There's a guy who wasn't drafted, was developed from within. Zach Hyman's the ultimate. Connor Brown as well. So I don't know firsthand. The goaltender was the guy, and that's probably what helped with the Joe Woll trade. And, quite often we see goaltenders make the jump up, and they do it at the NHL level. So he certainly put himself in the mix. But there's nobody else you come back with a wow thing, but you hopefully upgrade some depth pieces because when they committed to so much money with the top four forwards when Mitch Marner was here, Tavares and Nylander and Austin Matthews, of course, it just seemed a revolving door that you never got that consistency with your third line in particular, and to a degree your fourth line, that kind of depth that you need, especially in the playoffs. So quite often, that is something that is developed through your minor league system. And hopefully this winning culture helped a piece or two come forward. But there's none that really jumps out at me beyond Easton Cowan.
Yeah. I want to ask you like a broader question, and I don't know if you have the answer for this, but when I do a lot of work with Kevin Weeks, and he's from, the Toronto area there, and he always talks about, he feels like that some of these teams, particularly the Leafs, they don't do enough work in their own backyard. There's so many players that come out of the GTA area, the Greater Toronto area that, obviously the star players, I mean, everybody's in on, but there's so many players, and guys kind of end up finding ways to play in the NHL, and they end up in different places. Do you feel the Leafs do a good enough job, or have they done a good enough job really understanding all the different players in their region there, where it's such a fruitful landscape for hockey players?
So I think that's a really good observation by Kevin. And of course, times are different that everyone is scouted. So all 32 teams, there's no surprises. But you look at that core. Now, Mitch Marner's, there's a different slant on it. But when Mitch Marner, Connor Brown, Zach Hyman, Mark Giordano wanted to come here. I think I get pissed off when people say, who would want to play in Toronto? I go, who wouldn't want to play in Toronto? Yeah. Are you kidding me? So you get recognized. That's understood. But you get your ass kissed more than the other thing, okay? You really do.
That's true.
And you absolutely do. Yep. And I think about those guys, John Tavares, the whole thing coming back. So I think there's doesn't mean the player won't try any differently or harder if he's on one of the 31 other NHL teams. Yeah. But I think there's a bit of an intangible it factor there that Kevin has something.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's so many good players there, and some of the guys are just kind of diamonds in the rough. And you're around them, you have an opportunity maybe to see them more. You can develop guys. They go into your minor league system. You never know. You end up like you mentioned, a Bobby McMahon who came out. I'm really kind of was disappointed that they traded Bobby McMahon because I like having guys that you find and develop and grow into good players. I thought he was a good Leaf.
EJ, the guy got 29 goals on 2 crappy teams. Goals
I
are hard to
know.
find. Like I'm baffled by this.
Yeah.
Now, what are you taking a bit less to stay in Toronto? I don't know that, but it wasn't like he got $9 million.
Yeah.
Where are you going to get 29 goals? I know 10 of them were with the Seattle, but I mean, yeah, 100% like that. So I'm a little perplexed about that as well. And I think perplexed that trade deadline. There was that great story. I don't know, Keith Pellick's trying to dispute part of it in The Athletic, but boy, oh boy, you talk about a dysfunctional 4 to 6 to 8 weeks or season that evolved, because losing does suck. That really showed it to a very unfortunate degree, and is why Brad Treliving couldn't make the end of the season. They had to do something while the season was still on. Again, a lot of it, according to, let's call them allegations in that rather unique column.
Yeah. How about, you mentioned that. How about the Matthew Knies thing? Almost traded at the deadline. Apparently, he's still kind of one of these guys, right? I get the sense right now that if somebody came in and made a really good offer, they could get Matthew Knies, but it would have to be a pretty significant offer. Where are you on Knies? Because I like him as a player. I think he's one of those guys that really helps you win. But the Leafs have other needs, and if they can make a deal that would really, let's say, restart their blue line, I think you have to consider it.
Okay, but it had to be, it had to be kind of like the Ryan Johansson, Seth Jones trade that surprised everyone years ago, Nashville and Columbus. Quality young play. I know there's more current ones, but anyway, whatever. I'm just, but
I know what you mean. Kind of a real hockey trade.
Yeah, they can't take futures. They can't take like that's so. And the other part, EJ. Okay, this year, when everything's, when you have a horrible season, and I was with the Leafs with a lot of seasons that weren't very good. So everyone can just say, just wipe the slate clean. Well, no. You got to really identify what you have good there. There is good there so you've got to really do a good job identifying. So who is the real Matthew Knies? He played hurt a lot of last season. Yeah. I'm really bullish on him, and he signed at a relatively team-friendly rate. So I am more saying, again, just like you got to find someone to replace Bobby McMahon's 29 goals. This is more of a blue chip kind of complete guy that I don't know how you would replace him. So I'm right now a Matthew Knies guy, unless a current player, the Mikko Rantanen trade comes up again or something. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Some high-end defender, some high-end defenseman that comes, if some kind of package where you get, let's say, Zach Werenski comes to the Leafs. I don't know, but you
never know.
That would take more than probably one Matthew Knies, but who knows? You never know how these things play out. Last thing, I want to get your thought quick about the Brady Tkachuk situation, him going to Florida. I'll just quickly, for me, I get where Ottawa was in all this. I get they were up against it a little bit. But I would love at some point for somebody just to say, listen, I'm not being held hostage here. We'll try to accommodate you if we can. But listen, if we can't, you got 2 years left on your deal. Enjoy your time here.
Well, let's see if Steve Yzerman does that with Dylan Larkin. Let's see where it might happen, because I agree with you about, just, hey, you've got the right to say I'm not going to sign later on. But right now, under the contract, I mean, Scott Stevens really didn't want to go to New Jersey initially when he was compensation from St. Louis. And so you've got that particular right. I think you look, his dad what a great weekend. His dad getting honored as
unbelievable
inductee. But, his little jabs on the podcast, that kind of stuff is little stuff that's big stuff. Yeah. And I think, EJ, and it got alluded to by some Ottawa people, that even in the dressing room, the Brady Tkachuk thing wasn't playing well. And not disrespectful him as a player, leader, whatever, but just that, this is getting a little too obvious. This is too much of a distraction. And the dressing room was real, right? And I think that's where Steve Staios kind of said that, Brad Treliving got on it a year ahead in Calgary with Matthew Tkachuk. Jim Rutherford did it a year and a half early with Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. And Staios decided, I'm going to do it 2 years early with Brady Tkachuk, because it's, there's way more smoke. There's way more fire than smoke about it. And it ain't going to go away. And it's not going to go away because it was real.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. In the end, Gord, we always find out how it
Yep.
plays out, So we'll see what the future holds. But hey, listen, my friend, thank you so much for taking the time today. I could talk to you for another hour, but you
Well,
got things to do, and they'll cut us off.
well, they'll cut us off. Great catching up with EJ. I'll catch you down the road. A real pleasure.
All right, Gord. We'll do it again sometime really soon. Gord Stellick, you can hear him every morning on NHL Network Radio. You have been watching the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember, like, subscribe. We got great stuff for you all the time. Have a great day.